5 costs: housing, healthcare, childcare, transportation, taxes. Each one looks reasonable on its own. Stack all 5 at $129,000 a year, top 15% of American earners, and the total exceeds take-home pay. That's the cost compression trap. 5 categories. Each grew 2 to 4 times faster than wages over the past 20 years. The squeeze isn't about spending habits, it's structural. And the math proves it. $129,000 puts a household in the 85th percentile of American income, higher than 5 out of 6 families in the country. 68% of the US economy depends on consumer spending. Most people hear a 6-figure household income and think comfort, stability, maybe even wealth. The data tells a different story. After mandatory costs, a family of 4 at this income has nothing left. Not a little. 0. Sometimes less than 0. By the end of this, you'll see all 5 layers of the cost compression trap and understand why the cost of living in America broke the math for the middle class. Here's how it actually works. Start with gross income, $129,000. Federal income taxes take roughly 18 to 20% after the standard deduction. Add state income tax, averaging 5 to 6% depending on where you live. Then FICA, that's Social Security and Medicare combined, pulls another 7.65% from every paycheck. Total tax burden, approximately 30 to 32% of gross. That leaves about $88,000 in actual take-home pay. $41,000 disappeared before a single bill gets paid. Think of it like paying for the meal before you see the menu. $41,000, just for the right to earn income. That's the first layer of the trap, and most people don't even count it. Now the real cost stack begins. Housing comes first. The median US home price sits around $412,000. Put 20% down, which itself requires saving $82,000, a barrier most families take years to clear. Finance the rest at 7% interest. Monthly mortgage payment alone, roughly $2,190. Add property taxes, averaging 1.1% of assessed value nationally, another $4,500 a year. Homeowners insurance, $2,300 annually, and that figure jumps 60% since 2020 alone. Maintenance adds about 1% of the home's value per year, another $4,000. Total annual housing cost, approximately $38,000. That's 43% of take-home pay, consumed on a single line item. The historic FHA affordability guideline says housing should cost no more than 28% of gross income. At $129,000, 28% would be $36,000. Even by that generous standard, the median home already blows past the limit. The guideline was built for a different era. The pattern shows up clearly when you compare the ratios. In 1985, the median home cost roughly 3 times median household income. Today, it exceeds 5 times. Or that single shift in the ratio explains more about middle-class financial pressure than any quarterly inflation report. Like trying to fill a bathtub while someone drills holes in the bottom. Income trickles in, housing drains it out. Healthcare stacks next. And it stacks hard. The average employee share of a family health insurance premium through an employer plan runs about $6,500 a year. That's just the premium, the ticket to enter the system. It doesn't cover much by itself. Co-pays, deductibles, and prescriptions add another $4,000 to $5,500 annually. Total healthcare burden, roughly $11,000 per household per year. To put that in perspective, the United States spends 17.3% of its entire GDP on healthcare. No other developed nation exceeds 12%. Germany spends 12%, Japan spends 11%, Canada spends 11%. That 5-point gap isn't an abstract statistic. It shows up directly in household budgets. Translation: a family earning $129,000 spends 12.5% of their take-home income on healthcare alone, and still faces a $5,000 deductible before insurance covers anything major. Like paying rent on a building, you're not allowed to enter until you pay a second fee at the door. The data tells a different story than the one most people believe about American healthcare. The assumption is that employer coverage solves the problem. It doesn't. It just hides the cost inside a paycheck deduction most people never add up annually. That's 2 of 5. 56% of take-home pay consumed. Already past the halfway mark. Now, childcare. This is where the cost compression trap snaps shut for most families. Average annual childcare cost per child in the United States: $13,000 for an infant. About $10,000 for toddlers and preschool. 2 kids in care, $20,000 to $26,000 a year. About $129,000 gross. Childcare alone consumes 16 to 20% of total income before taxes. The OECD average across developed nations, roughly 12%. America runs nearly double that rate. The common assumption breaks down right here. People hear $129,000 and picture investment portfolios, vacation funds, growing savings accounts. The reality? A family at this income with 2 young children often spends more on daycare than on their mortgage. In Massachusetts, annual infant care tops $20,000 per child. 2 kids in daycare there cost more than in-state tuition at a public university. Picture a dual-income family in suburban Atlanta. Both parents are professionals. Combined income, $131,000. And they drop their 2 kids at daycare every morning at 7:15. Monthly childcare bill, $1,850. That's before the mortgage payment hits, before health insurance gets deducted, before car payments clear. By the time all 5 mandatory categories process, there's less than $700 left per month for groceries, utilities, gas, clothing, and everything else. Multiply that scenario by millions of families, and you start to understand why consumer spending faces a structural ceiling most economic forecasts ignore. 3 of 5. Already past 80% of take-home income. Transportation isn't optional in most of suburban America. The average new car payment reached $730 per month. Used vehicles aren't much relief at $530. A 2-car household, almost standard in the suburbs where most families at this income level live, faces $18,000 to $22,000 annually in car payments, insurance, fuel, and maintenance. Auto insurance alone rose 33% since 2020. The average annual premium now exceeds $2,790 per vehicle. Think of transportation like a toll road you can't exit. You need the car to reach the job that pays the income that funds the housing you can barely afford. Each cost in the trap depends on the others. Remove the car, lose the job. Remove the job, lose the house. The costs aren't independent, they're load-bearing. 4 of 5. Let's stack the full picture. $129,000 gross. Taxes, $38,700. Housing, $38,000. Only healthcare, $11,000. Childcare, $22,000. Transportation, $20,000. Food, at the BLS Consumer Expenditure Survey average, $10,500. Total mandatory costs, roughly $140,200. That's $11,000 more than gross income. Before saving a single dollar for retirement. Before paying electric or water bills. Before buying school supplies. Before a single birthday gift, date night, or family trip. The math doesn't just leave no margin, it produces a deficit. Most people get this part wrong. They assume families at this income are overspending, buying luxury items, living beyond their means. The numbers show the opposite. These are mandatory costs, non-negotiable. The deficit exists before any discretionary spending touches the budget. But the pattern isn't perfect. Not every family has 2 children in daycare. Fair counter-argument. Remove childcare entirely, $22,000 off the stack. What's left? About $10,800 for the entire year to cover retirement savings, utilities, clothing, entertainment, and emergencies. Everything else are household needs. That's $900 a month. For a family earning more than 85% of Americans. Lisa, a financial counselor in suburban Phoenix, sees this arithmetic every week. Families sit across her desk, frustrated and confused. They earn solid salaries. They don't overspend, they track every purchase. But the checking account hits zero by the 23rd of every month, and they can't figure out why. She pulls up the same 5 categories on her calculator, and the math speaks for itself. The issue isn't behaviour, it isn't discipline, it isn't avocado toast, it's arithmetic. The stack doesn't care about budgeting apps. Now here's the complication that makes this worse. Some argue dual income solves the problem, but $129,000 is a common dual income figure. A teacher and a nurse, some 2 mid-level office workers, a retail manager, and an electrician. The second earner's paycheck often triggers additional childcare costs, longer commutes, and higher marginal tax brackets. Research shows 60 to 70% of a second income disappears into costs that only exist because of the second job. That's not a solution. That's a treadmill running faster. Others suggest geographic arbitrage. Move somewhere cheaper, but lower cost metros come with lower wages. The ratio of income to cost holds. A family earning $85,000 in Tulsa faces roughly the same proportional squeeze as one earning $140,000 in Denver. The trap is structural. It scales with the geography. The mechanism is simple. The implications aren't. Compare the eras and the scale becomes obvious. In 1985, under the total mandatory cost stack for a middle-class family consumed roughly 54% of gross income. Housing cost 3 times median income. Healthcare premiums were a fraction of today's numbers. Childcare cost barely registered as a category. Today, that same stack exceeds 100% of gross income at the 85th percentile. Housing runs 5 times median income. College tuition, which feeds into student debt payments for young families, increased roughly 1,100% since 1980. That's 6 times faster than wages grew. Real wage growth for middle-class households over the past 25 years, about 6 to 9% total. Meanwhile, the costs that define middle-class life grew 50 to 150%. CPI, the Consumer Price Index, actually the official measure of inflation, averaged 2 to 3% over this period. Sounds manageable. But CPI systematically underweights the 3 costs that matter most to families: housing, healthcare, and education. Those 3 categories grew 2 to 4 times faster than headline CPI. The inflation families feel is structurally different from the inflation that gets reported, and any financial planning built on CPI assumptions leaves households short. So here's a question. Based on what you've seen about the cost compression trap, a household earns $129,000. Both parents work. 2 kids in daycare. 32% goes to taxes. Mortgage, $2,200 per month. Healthcare premiums, $540. Car payments, $1,100 combined. How much is left for food, utilities, savings, and everything else? The answer, $612 a month. Less than what the average American family of 4 spends on groceries alone. Zoom out, and the economic outlook becomes clear. Consumer spending drives 68% of the US economy. When middle-class households run out of margin, spending doesn't slow by choice. It slows by mathematics. That's not a recession trigger visible in quarterly GDP. It's a structural drag, like rust forming on a bridge. You don't see it in the quarterly inspection. You see it when the surface cracks. If mandatory costs keep growing faster than wages, and 25 years of trend data says they will, the gap between income and obligation widens further. The implications ripple outward. Housing demand softens as fewer families qualify for mortgages. Consumer credit expands to fill the gap, until delinquencies rise and lenders pull back. Retail earnings compress. Tax revenue from consumption stalls. The cost compression trap has 5 signals. Housing to income ratio above 4. Healthcare spending above 15% of GDP. Childcare costs above 15% of household income. Real wage growth below cost growth for 3 consecutive years. And household debt service ratio climbing, while savings rate falls. When all 5 are flashing, the middle class isn't struggling because of bad decisions. The arithmetic simply stopped working. 5 mandatory costs, each one individually reasonable. Housing at 28% of income. That's the guideline. Healthcare at 12%. That's the American norm. Childcare at 17%. Working parent reality. Transportation at 15%. Suburban standard. But the guideline for housing never accounted for healthcare, which never accounted for childcare, which never accounted for transportation. They were each designed in isolation. Nobody stress tested the total, stacked them, and they exceed 100% of available income. Now at $129,000, 85th percentile, top 15%. The math doesn't work and the signal is already here. It just looks like an empty checking account.